I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, April the 28th, brought to you in part by Livestock Risk Services. Been talking about how valuable these LRPs are, these livestock risk protection policies. It's a way to protect yourself, to hedge your cattle without having to open up a trading account with a stockbroker, have to sweat out the board and all this kind of thing. You just you pick how much protection you want. It costs you so many dollars per hundred, usually $5 to $6 a hundred there. You can get the government to kick in at the least 30% of the premium, help you pay that, and then you don't have to worry about what the market does when you got your cattle turned out. You can do it on calves, you can do it on backgrounded cattle, you can do it on fed cattle. But Livestock Risk Services are some of the professionals that do this all day, every day. You can see their numbers right here. Get a hold of them. They'll talk to you, ask them about it. No dumb questions. Visit about it and get yourself protected with these things that are so volatile. You just have to do something. Before I get started, I want to tell you guys, I have a lot of ways you can watch this report. My favorite is on nationalbeefwire.com, but you can watch it on Twitter. You can watch it a lot of different places. But on YouTube this week, we passed 12,000 subscribers. And that's pretty good. I mean, it's not good for topless girls or baby kittens, but for a guy sitting here talking about the cattle market, it ain't too bad. But I appreciate you guys. And I'm humbled that as many of you watch it as I do, and we continue to build the Feeder Flash Gang membership right here. But let's talk about what happened here as we get to late in the week. Well, it's a cycle, stupid. Don't you guys know how this cattle deal works? It's all about the cycle. It doesn't matter how much competition you have, how much negotiated trade you have, how much price transparency you have. It's just all about the cycle. And about every 8 to 10 years, you're going to make enough money to kind of pay some of your bills. And then for the other 7 or 8 years in a row, you're going to lose your ass. Well, evidently, that's what's happening here. But we had our second of the two-day hearings. On Tuesday, we had the Senate Ag Committee hearing, and it was fantastic. And there were a lot of supporters for your Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, and the people that were there testifying were good, and we saw that. Well, then on Wednesday, we had an Ag Committee hearing in the House of Representatives. Not nearly as smooth, took longer, wasn't as fun to watch, and basically, for a better way of saying it, it was just kind of a shit show. So we had a two-part panel again. Chairman Scott there, he brought a couple of people in from a New York Times article that he had read that kind of upset him about losing our cattle farmers and things like that. So he had some people brought in there. They had a young man that was real worried about losing the family farm, and had a story about someone that had committed hara-kiri because they got so stressed out about it. We had an older gentleman there from Montana that didn't really seem to know exactly what we were discussing there. He was wanting a whole lot more than what was on the table. And then you had Don Schiffelbein, the NCBA president. Well, needless to say, the NCBA president was much more polished. He was much more prepared and much more knowledgeable about the subject. Well, he definitely, of course, NCBA is totally against this, along with Texas Cattle Feeders and Kansas Livestock Association. Everybody else is fairly neutral or totally for it. Well, I guess Oklahoma cattlemen, they always throw in with Texas Cattle Feeders and Kansas there, but everybody else is pretty much for it, or they've been strong-armed by NCBA. But he was very good. He was very polished. And he kind of endeared himself to the ag committee there, and they went to him because there was no telling what the other two testimony people were going to say if they even understood the question. So you know, it was a winner for those that oppose Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act as far as the first half of the two-part panel there. Schimmelbein, you know, he was likable, and he stated his case. The only thing I saw wrong with his testimony is he did lie about the 75% of a robust voluntary program that NCBA tried and failed. Did not acknowledge that it was a complete bust, that they hit every trigger as fast as they could hit them, and that it was a failure to show that you know, we could get negotiated trade and robust trade. But he made it sound like it was a really good deal. And later, when they asked the Big Four CEOs about it, they didn't even know anything about it. They'd never heard of it before. So you know, that was kind of a bust there. But they had a House member, Axne from Iowa, and Feenstra from Nebraska. They were the ones that really grilled them about things, and you could tell they were for it because they represent their constituents, because our Midwestern cattle feeders, they really need this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, and they're the ones that participate in the most negotiated trade, and it works for them. But the guys in the Southern Plains who don't have nearly as good a cattle say that they can't get, you know, they can't sell their high quality cattle on the open market. You know, if I've got something pretty fancy, and I don't care what it is, I know how to ask more for it and then not sell it if I'm not happy. But that, you know, evidently your Southern Plains guys can't do it with their really high quality cattle, while the extreme premium cattle in the Midwest and Northern Plains don't have any problem finding a way to sell those at all. But they did talk about how there's been no results from the investigation that USDA has supposed to have been having on the Big Four packers to see if they were colluding to lower the processing of beef so that the price would get back up. But anyway, we got through that first part, and then we brought on your 4 CEOs of your Big Four packers. Only one of them, National Beef Packers CEO, thought it important enough to show up in person. All the other guys were on a Zoom call. And so, but they all 4 were there. And when they started asking them questions, of course, you know, oh, you guys don't understand. You know, we work so hard to supply the world with the most, you know, safe product and the best quality product that we absolutely can. And we've got all these problems with labor, and COVID was really tough on it. And we're still trying to get recovered from COVID, and it was tough on us too. I guess it was really tough during those few weeks when they couldn't keep the chain speeds going as fast as they wanted, and they had the price of box beef cutout value so high that they were making over $2,500 per head. But it was really tough on them, and so, and then it almost seemed like a lot of your House members that were on that committee kind of felt sorry for them, and we're just so glad that we had them, and because they were just straight up kind of guys, and it was very interesting that they were there and took their time out of their busy schedules to explain that to them, and so many of them kind of felt sorry for them. But I tell you what, if you got to watching the deal, and I almost fell asleep there and didn't really notice, and then got to thinking, you know, they swore in those first 3 testifiers. And you think, why would they swear those people in? I've never seen them do anything like that. And then one of the Ag House members even asked, why did we swear those 3 people in? And they said, oh, well, don't worry about it. But then whenever the 4 packers got on there, the CEOs got on there, they also swore them in. Well, that kind of made you raise your eyebrow a little bit. They swore them. And then they talked them a little bit, kind of wooled them around, got them all warm and fuzzy and everything. And then Chairman Scott come back at some point and said, well, I want to talk to you guys about this meat margin. And that's the amount of money that they were making on the cattle compared to what they were paying for, or making on the carcass compared to what they were paying for the cattle. And he showed this this chart, and the chart was just straight up. I mean, it looked like manhood on an 18-year-old on his first trip to the nudie bar. And he showed that to the crowd, and he said, I want to remind you guys that you guys are under oath and you're sworn in. Did you guys do any antitrust colluding to limit the supply of beef in 2015 whenever you guys decided to start making some money on these cattle? And he didn't really say it like colluding. He said, did you guys have an agreement where you got together on this thing and decided to limit the supply of beef to improve your margins? And he asked them all that, and they kind of looked around a little bit, and they said, no. And then he had to get each one of them to say no, and they all said no. And then JBS, the farmer's friend, he said, well, not that I can recall. And then maybe he did recall his company paying $52.5 million penalty in accusations of him conspiring to limit the supply of beef just 2 months ago. Huh. Well, then you think, and then once he got them to do that, he seemed very content. And then Chairman Scott did tell us that he is friend. It looked like something that Chuck Grassley would do. And then he said he and Chuck Grassley were good friends, and that they'd been working on this deal together. And and then JBS there they just go through life before they came to the USA, just paying penalties and fines because they've been bribing people, and they've been jacking with the hot scales, and they've been colluding with their competitors and doing all this kind of stuff. And then during the testimony, the JBS CEO said, well, we compete every single day in the cash market, and we would gladly be able, like to talk to people about their cattle. We want to buy quality cattle. We want to compete against our competitors to get those quality cattle, and we'll compete and buy those cattle from whoever, whenever, and however they want to sell them to us. So if you guys got cattle to sell, don't worry, just call up JBS CEO and say, I've got some cattle ready. Are you interested in buying them? I would like the sweetheart deal that Five Rivers has. And he'd be glad to give it to you whenever, however, and whoever you are. No problem. But I tell you what, and I noticed it didn't take very long before some other articles started hitting the internet. Other people that were watching that saw that too. So there they said, under oath, that they did not collude to limit the beef supplies, but in fact they did so much that JBS has already paid $52.5 million, and we've just been waiting for the others to pay. But I think that's kind of curious, and I think that might have something to do with the results of the investigation that supposedly they're still putting together. But that's kind of what I saw on the Wednesday House Ag Committee hearing. Let's talk about your board on Wednesday. April live cattle futures down $1.50. We're at the very tail end of April. That market has become ripe. The fruition of the April live cattle contract is $138.50. Your cheapest fat cattle in the cash market are in the Southern Plains. They've sold at $140. We've sold a whole lot more of them in the cash market in the Northern Plains from $145 to $147. Why do people use the April live cattle futures market to hedge their cattle if it can't meet up whenever it comes time? That's ridiculous. And it makes you also wonder, why don't they demand delivery? Well, CME's got it fixed where it's tough to demand delivery. If they were in the Northern Plains, they would demand delivery, but also your packers don't have any long contracts of live cattle futures. If they did, then that would support the market. But it would seem like a no-brainer that guys that are producing fed cattle short the market to hedge, and the guys that have to buy them to fill their needs would long hedge. Why do they need to do that? We've got alternative marketing agreements. They know where their cattle are coming from. They know when they're going to get them. They know when they're going to pull them, and they know how they're going to screw the guys out of them. And yet we just coddle them, and man, you guys are really doing a great job. Really appreciate you guys. June live cattle futures down $1.22 at 135.02. Their back months, next August was down just 7 cents, but all the others were down more, to as much as down $1.27. April feeder cattle, which grains were a bunch higher again, but April feeder cattle were unchanged at 156.20. That's just about where your CME cash feeder cattle index is, and it's exactly where your real-time index was at the end of Wednesday's trading. So, that's how that works. May feeder cattle down 337 at 157.35. August feeder cattle down 420. And guys buying them readily in your auction sales middle and late part of this week. Your back months of feeder cattle down 257 to 375. Ouch. Corn up 12 1/4 cent at 8.15 1/2 cent a bushel. Beans up 21 1/4 cent at 17.26 1/2. Kansas City hard red winter wheat down 9 1/2 cents at 11.48 1/4. Fat cattle trade, not as much volume as what we saw on Tuesday, but there was a lot more volume late Tuesday that we didn't see confirmed, and we've already got about 100,000 head sales there. So we didn't see a whole lot of confirmed on Wednesday, but there was more as they rounded all of Tuesday's trade up. But Iowa just had 3,200 on Wednesday. So far for the week, 30,700 head. That's all they ever have. 146 to 147 live. Dress market is a little bit lower, 232 to 236, and that 236 is the best we've seen. That's $2 lower than the best we saw last week. Our live sales are right at the top of last week's price spread. Nebraska 4,100 on Wednesday, 30,100 for the week. Pretty good movement there already. 146 live, 230 to 232 dressed. Kansas didn't have any sales confirmed on Wednesday. 23,700 though for the week, with all that happening on Tuesday. They're saying a lot of it's for the 15 to 30 day delivery, because your packers believe within that time frame we're going to start running into the higher supplies of market ready cattle. Texas about 800 head on Wednesday, 15,600, which is way over what we normally see in Texas, all at 140. Stockman's Livestock and Yankton's fat cattle sale on Tuesday, they sold from 142 to 148, with the program cattle, non-implanted or drug-free, as high as 156.75, and not singles, guys, loads. Had about 2,000 head there. Box beef cutout values were lower, and they've been lower, and they're not behaving like what your packers would like for them to. But as we assume that they're going to turn around and get higher again before we get closer to these early summer holidays. But choice cuts down 226 at 261.91. Selects down 391 at 250.232. Slaughter's running at a very good pace. 375,000 up through Wednesday. 14,000 more than last week. 16,000 more than the same week a year ago. Tonight, Thursday night, I'm going to be speaking at the Callaway Livestock Center in Kingdom City, Missouri, right on I-70, guys, just a little bit east of Columbia there. Talked to Jack Harrison, my friend. He's bringing me in there for their local cattlemen's meeting. Said he had told people that if they were members of Missouri Cattlemen's Association, it's free to come watch, and he's going to give you a ribeye steak. If you're not a member, he still wants you to come. He's just going to charge you $20 for the ribeye steak, and then you can watch the presentation also. So we're hoping to have a big crowd there. He said he's bought 300 ribeyes, and he said if we get all those served out, we'll go to Plan B after that. But he's got some cattle out there in the yards, and we can string them up if we have to. But hope to see a lot of you at Callaway Livestock Center tonight, Thursday night, Kingdom City, Missouri. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV Auction. late in the day on Wednesday at 156.22. That was down 91 cents. Look at your big sales on Wednesday. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 9,500 head. Pretty good receipts there for them. Feeder steers $2 to $4 lower. Feeder heifers steady to $1 lower. Calves are $3 to $6 higher. Dodge City, Kansas, winter livestock, 3,000 head there. All classes range steady to as much as $6 lower. Cherokee Sales Company in Cherokee, Oklahoma, they had a good sale there with a lot of yearlings weighing in the 8s and 9s there. The 9-weight yearlings, they had 695 head of them as you look at these loads and bigger that I'm showing you. But 695 head of the 9-weight steers in Cherokee averaged 930 pounds with a weighted average price on all of them of $145.92. That was about $5 higher than last week's sale. But they had a sale in Bassett, Nebraska, guys. Big special there. 5,500 head. It's a special where the guys normally bring their Hereford cattle. And then, of course, they always have the good blacks there. But look at this automated market report from Bassett, Nebraska on Cattle Market Central there. Look at your best tested weights. 704 head of your 5-weight steer calves average 556 with a weighted average price of $200.19 per hundred. How about 1,130 head of 6-weight steer calves, and they average 641 with a weighted average price on all your 6-weight steers of $194.79. Wow. 441 head of 7-weight steers average 734 with a weighted average price of $172.67. 355 head of 8-weight steers and Bassett averaged 837 at $162.64. Had some 8-weight replacement quality heifers, a couple deals they put together. 53 head of them averaged 864 pounds with an average price on those replacement heifers of $158.46, weighing 864, guys. Wow. Individual quote from Parsons, Kansas there. They can sell big cattle pretty good too there. 45 head, which actually load as heavy as they were, weighed 1027 at $140.10, Parsons, Kansas. But the next quotes that I got to give you is out of Bassett, Nebraska. Tell you what, these cattle were just are black, short yearling cattle or big calves. They come out of Bassett there. Larry's cattle, there was 250 head of them, and they weighed 729 pounds at $181. The Larry Nelson cattle there, he normally keeps them until fall and sells them as big yearlings, but he's just too dry and had to sell them. 250 head, weigh 729 at $181. They were blacks. But the best quote that I saw anywhere was also from Bassett. It's your Ralgro top quote for the day. Monahan's Herefords. I saw them a couple of years ago when I was out there. When I was out there, water was standing in those sandhill pastures, but it's been dry. They've had fires around that area. But those Hereford cattle right there from Monahan's, 250 head of them. Steers weighed 674 at $192.50. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.